When I bought a duplex without telling my parents, I later found out they planned for my brother's whole family to move in with me for free. I stayed quiet. Weeks later, they drove by and saw renters in both units. Can you imagine pouring your life savings into a lifelong dream, every single extra penny, only to hear your own family plotting to snatch it away, right under your nose? That's exactly what happened to me, and it absolutely shattered everything I thought I knew about family. For 6 grueling years, Jeannie, a 32-year-old financial advisor in Boston, had scraped and saved for one thing, owning my own property. Last spring, that dream finally became a reality when I bought a duplex. I decided to keep it under wraps from my family for a bit, a decision that, in hindsight, was far wiser than I ever could have known. Then, one Sunday, at what was supposed to be a cozy family dinner, I overheard something that made my blood run cold. My parents, without so much as a word to me, were planning for my brother Kevin, his wife Sarah, and their 3 kids to move into my new duplex, rent-free. My duplex. Growing up, there was always this unspoken rule in our family. I was the one who was always expected to help everyone, especially family. My parents, Martha and Frank, drilled it into us, family comes first. But somehow, that burden always felt heavier on my shoulders than on my older brother, Kevin. Don't get me wrong, I love my family deeply, but a pattern had developed over the years, one I was only just beginning to truly see. Kevin, 36, was the charming one, always quick with a joke or a story. He was also notoriously, disastrously bad with money. By 25, he was drowning in credit card debt from impulsive buys, a motorcycle, expensive vacations. By 30, he borrowed money from our parents for a business venture that crashed and burned in 6 months. And every single time, our family rallied around him. Financial support, emotional comfort, you name it. And me? I was always expected to contribute. Whether it was lending money I'd carefully saved, or offering free childcare for his 3 kids. His current situation was particularly dire. 8 months ago, he lost his job. His wife, Sarah, a part-time teacher, simply couldn't make ends meet alone. They had Liam, 10, Sophie, 8, and little Ethan, 5. Their landlord had just hiked the rent, and they were really struggling. Meanwhile, I had been relentless in my pursuit of financial independence. After my MBA, I landed a solid job as a financial advisor. The irony wasn't lost on me. I helped other people manage their money, while my own brother seemed utterly incapable. I lived frugally, in a tiny 1-bedroom, brown-bagged my lunch, cut every unnecessary expense. Every single month, 30% of my income went straight into savings for my property dream. When I finally hit my goal, I started researching. A duplex felt perfect. I could live in one unit and rent out the other to cover the mortgage. After months of searching, I found it, a charming brick duplex, quiet neighborhood, 20 minutes from downtown. It needed some love, sure, but it was solid, and it was in my budget. The closing date approached, and I was a mess of excitement and anxiety. This was the biggest purchase of my life, and I was doing it alone. I decided to keep it a secret from my family until it was all finalized. Partly a surprise, but mostly because I had this nagging fear they'd find a way to make this milestone about Kevin and his needs. The day I signed those papers, the day I held those keys? Exhilarating. Standing alone in that empty duplex, a surge of pure pride washed over me. Each unit had 2 bedrooms, a bathroom, a cozy living room, a functional kitchen. The backyard was small, but lovely, with a maple tree for shade. I took photos, dreamed up renovations. Over the next week, I got utilities connected, scheduled cleaning, and listed the 2nd unit for rent. My plan was to move into one side within the month, and have a tenant in the other shortly after. That rental income would cover 60% of my mortgage. I even roped in a few friends to help me move some furniture into my unit. We spent a Saturday painting, pizza boxes empty on new countertops, paint smudges on our clothes. By the end of the day, I felt a sense of ownership, an accomplishment unlike anything before. Little did I know, my carefully laid plans were about to crash headfirst into my family dynamics. The very next Sunday, I drove to my parents' house for dinner. I was buzzing, finally ready to share my big news. I imagined their proud faces, maybe a little surprise. I'd even brought a bottle of champagne. I arrived early, as always, to help Mom. Pot roast aroma filled the house. Dad was watching baseball. I was chopping vegetables in the kitchen when Kevin, Sarah, and the kids burst through the front door. Mom went to greet them, leaving me alone. I kept chopping, half listening to the chatter. Then, I realized they'd all moved to Dad's study, right next to the kitchen. Their voices were low, but in the quiet house, I could hear everything through the thin wall. It's the perfect solution, I heard Dad say. Jeannie has all this extra space now. My hands froze. The knife hovered over a cucumber. Extra space? No! They couldn't possibly know about my duplex. I hadn't told anyone. She always helps family, Mom chimed in. That's how we raised her. Kevin's voice, it would be such a relief, especially for the kids. They need stability. Then Sarah, I was thinking we could put the boys in one bedroom and Sophie in the other. The living room in their side is bigger than ours, right? Their side, my heart started to hammer against my ribs. Somehow, they knew. And they had already, definitively, made plans for Kevin's family to move in. Without even consulting me. I stood there, frozen, straining to hear more. Do you think Jeannie will want us to help her move her things to make room? Dad asked. No need, Martha, Kevin interjected, not Dad. She hardly has any furniture in that apartment of hers. Always saving money instead of living a little. I heard Sarah's laugh, then, well, we can help her decorate. I have so many ideas for making the place feel like a real home. My cheeks burned. Anger. Disbelief. Not only had they discovered my purchase, but they'd already decided Kevin's family would move into the second unit. And it sounded like they expected it to be rent-free. I forced myself to keep chopping, my mind racing. How did they find out? Property records? A church friend seeing me there? No matter how, their presumption was staggering. At dinner, I waited, curious to see how they'd spring this on me. After pleasantries, Dad cleared his throat. Jeannie, he began, a smile playing at his lips. We have some wonderful news. We found the perfect solution to Kevin's housing problem. I took a sip of water, avoiding eye contact. Mom continued, we know about your duplex, sweetheart. Mrs. Johnson from church saw you there last week. We're so proud of you for taking such a big step. Before I could respond, Kevin jumped in. And it's such perfect timing, sis. With our rent situation and the kids' school being so close, it just makes sense for us to take the other unit. Sarah nodded enthusiastically. We promise to be the perfect neighbors. The kids are so excited about living close to their Aunt Jeannie. All eyes were on me, waiting for my excited agreement. The expectation in that room was palpable. Of course I would say yes. When had I ever said no to my family? Kevin's children watched me with hopeful eyes. Liam, the oldest, piped up, Mom says we can walk to school from the new house, and you can help me with my math homework. I forced a smile, unable to crush the children's hopes in that moment. The adults took it as agreement. The conversation immediately turned to moving logistics. Mom started planning, we can help you move your things next weekend, and then Kevin and Sarah can start bringing theirs over the following week. Kevin added, the timing is perfect since our lease is up at the end of the month, and without rent to pay, we can finally start getting ahead financially. Rent-free. Explicitly stated. Not a single person at that table seemed to think this was an extraordinary request. No one asked how this might affect my mortgage payments, my financial plans. No one considered that I might have my own plans for the property I had worked so hard for. Instead of confronting them, I stayed quiet, nodding occasionally, pushing food around my plate. A lifetime of being the family peacekeeper held me back. But inside, something had irrevocably shifted. A boundary had been crossed that I absolutely could not ignore. The drive home that evening was a blur of conflicting emotions. Memories flooded back, the summer vacation I canceled to loan Kevin money for car repairs, the weekends I spent babysitting so he and Sarah could have date nights, the countless times I was expected to pick up the slack because I was single and supposedly had fewer responsibilities. As I pulled into my apartment parking lot, I made a decision. This time, it would be different. This time, I would put myself first. The next morning, I woke with a clarity I hadn't felt in years. Sitting at my tiny kitchen table, coffee in hand, I pulled out a notebook and started listing all the times my family had taken advantage of my generosity without reciprocation. The list grew quickly, incidents dating back to college. The time I worked 2 jobs to pay my way through undergrad while my parents paid Kevin's full tuition, justifying it because he wasn't as academically inclined. The 3 times Kevin had borrowed money from me with vague promises of someday. The Christmas when my parents suggested I buy the expensive gaming console for all the kids since I didn't have children of my own. The pattern was glaring, long-standing. I had been conditioned to be the family safety net, the responsible one who would always sacrifice. But what hit me hardest was the complete lack of consideration for my goals, my dreams. Not once had anyone at dinner asked about my plans for the duplex. The assumption was that my property, my investment, was a family resource to be allocated according to their needs. I called my closest friend, Taylor, who'd helped me move some furniture. When I explained, her outrage on my behalf was incredibly validating. Jeannie, that's absolutely ridiculous, she exclaimed. You saved for years for this. It's your investment, your future. They can't just decide to move in without asking, let alone expect to live there for free. But their family, I said, playing devil's advocate against my own interests, out of sheer habit. And Kevin does have the kids to think about. Taylor sighed. Being family doesn't give them the right to take advantage. Would Kevin do the same for you if the situations were reversed? We both knew the answer. Kevin had never demonstrated that level of sacrifice or consideration for me, ever. You need to set boundaries, Jeannie, Taylor continued. If you let them move in now, especially rent-free, you'll never get them out, and your investment will become a financial burden instead of the asset you worked so hard for. She was right. Deep down, I knew it. After our call, I made another decision. I wouldn't confront them directly yet, but I would move forward with my original plan for the duplex. In fact, I'd accelerate it. That afternoon, I contacted 3 property management companies. By Tuesday evening, I'd signed a contract with Cornerstone Property Management, a reputable firm. Their manager, David, assured me they could find qualified tenants quickly. I decided to rent out both units, rather than live in one myself. This would maximize income and create a clean break from family expectations. I could find a smaller apartment closer to my office, reducing my commute and creating more separation. By Friday, Cornerstone had already lined up viewings. I took a day off, met David, and prepped both units. Given the market, he suggested a 12-month lease with rent slightly higher than I'd calculated, which would cover nearly 75% of my mortgage. The next week was a whirlwind. While dodging calls and texts from my family about moving plans, I was secretly meeting tenants, reviewing applications, signing leases. I skipped Sunday dinner, claiming an urgent client project, buying myself more time. By the end of that week, I had signed agreements with 2 separate tenants, both with excellent credit and stable employment. The unit I'd initially intended for myself would go to Michael and Lisa, a young professional couple. The second unit, the one my family had mentally assigned to Kevin and Sarah, would be rented by Dr. Eleanor Wilson, a retired professor downsizing after her husband passed. Both leases started the first of the following month, just 2 weeks away. It was tight, but manageable. I arranged for cleaners, move-in inspections. Meanwhile, I found a small but modern 1-bedroom apartment just 3 blocks from my office. The rent was higher, but the convenience was worth it. And with both duplex units rented, my overall housing expenses would still be lower. I signed a 6-month lease, arranged my furniture move for the following weekend. I told only Taylor and 2 other close friends, swearing them to secrecy. I'd tell my family eventually, of course, but not until both units were occupied, and it was too late for them to change my plans. The guilt was considerable, especially when Kevin called to ask if I needed help packing my apartment. I gave vague responses. When Mom texted about measuring for curtains in Kevin's side, I replied I was still dealing with paperwork. As the tenants' move-in day approached, the calls and texts became more frequent, more insistent. Sarah sent links to furniture. Dad called to discuss helping with Kevin's moving costs. Mom left voicemails about organizing a housewarming party for all of us. Each message ratcheted up my anxiety, but also strengthened my resolve. The pattern was so clear now, my family making plans for my life, my resources, my future, without consulting me. Always assuming I would go along with whatever they decided was best, even when it primarily benefited Kevin at my expense. The weekend before my new tenants were scheduled to move in, I successfully relocated to my new apartment. I changed my address, updated everything. It was cozy, convenient, with a small balcony. As I unpacked, I felt a mix of guilt about the inevitable confrontation, anxiety about standing up to my family, but also a growing sense of pride and independence. I was taking control of my life, my financial future, in a way that felt terrifying and exhilarating. The final piece of my plan fell into place when David called. Both sets of tenants were moving in that Saturday. Everything was ready. All I had to do now was wait for the storm. The week leading up to that Saturday was unbelievably tense. Kevin texted daily, "Hey sis, can we drop off some of the kids' stuff this weekend? Sarah's already packed their rooms." I'd reply hours later, still finalizing some things with the property. "We'll let you know soon." Tuesday, Mom called. I let it go to voicemail. "Jeannie, sweetheart, I picked up some lovely curtains for your living room. Thought we could hang them this weekend when we help you get settled." I texted back, "Thanks, Mom, but I'm still sorting things out. Might need to postpone a bit." By Wednesday, Dad joined the campaign. His text was more direct. "Kevin needs to give notice to his landlord by Friday. When can they start moving their things to your place?" This needed more than a text. I called him after work, keeping my tone casual. "Dad, I understand Kevin's anxious, but there are still some repairs and paperwork I need to take care of before anyone can move in. I'll have a better timeline next week." His frustration was evident. "Jeannie, they need to make decisions now. Their landlord is already showing their apartment. We can't leave them without a place to live." "I understand, Dad," I replied, my voice steady. "But I need to make sure everything is properly set up first." He'll figure it out and let everyone know soon. Thursday brought an unexpected visit from Kevin to my office. I was in a client meeting when the receptionist told me he was in the lobby. I excused myself. Kevin looked agitated, pacing. When he saw me, he immediately launched into it. Jeannie, we need to talk about move-in dates. Sarah is freaking out. We have to be out by the end of the month, and you keep putting us off. I glanced around. This was not the place. Kevin, I'm with a client right now, I said in a low voice. And this isn't something we should discuss at my workplace. Well, you don't answer your phone or respond to texts with actual information. So what am I supposed to do? He shot back, his voice rising slightly. I took a deep breath. I have things under control. There are some issues with the property that I'm handling. You'll have more information by the weekend. I promise. This seemed to placate him temporarily, though his expression remained doubtful. As he turned to leave, he added, "Oh, and Sarah wanted to know if you have a preference on paint colors for the kids' rooms. She's thinking light blue for the boys and lavender for Sophie." The assumption that they'd be redecorating my property infuriated me, but I kept my composure. "We'll talk about all of that later," I said, already turning back to my meeting. That evening, an email from Sarah, duplex decorating ideas. Attached were Pinterest boards for each room of what she clearly considered their unit, along with links to furniture. The email ended with, "Let me know what you think. Also, do you mind if we paint the kitchen cabinets white? The current color is a bit dark for my taste." I closed the email without responding, my resolve hardening with each presumptuous communication. Friday brought the most difficult interaction yet. Mom called just as I was leaving work. "Jeannie, your father and I want to come over tomorrow morning to help you set up your place. Then we can get Kevin's side ready, too. They need to start moving in this weekend." The urgency in her voice made it clear their patience had run out. I knew I couldn't put them off any longer. "Mom, I have some errands to run tomorrow morning," I said carefully. "How about we talk about this on Sunday at dinner?" There was a pause. "Is everything okay, Jeannie? You've been so evasive lately. If there's a problem with the duplex, you know we can help. Your father is good with repairs, and I'm sure whatever is wrong can be fixed before Kevin and his family move in." The concern in her voice was genuine, making what I was doing feel even more deceptive. But I reminded myself of the years of one-sided expectations and held firm. "Everything is fine, Mom. I'll explain everything on Sunday. I promise." After hanging up, a text from Kevin, "Parents said you're being weird about move-in. What's going on? We need to get out of our place ASAP. Landlord is being a jerk." Followed by another, "Also, Sarah wants to know if we can get the measurements for the bedroom so we can make sure our furniture will fit. And almost forgot, can you chip in for the moving truck? Kind of tight on cash right now, but should be able to pay you back next month." Each message reinforced the absolute rightness of my decision. The entitlement was so ingrained Kevin couldn't even see it. He simply expected me to accommodate his needs, finance his move, rearrange my life to solve his problems, all without question or complaint. Saturday morning, the day my tenants were scheduled to move in, I woke with a knot of anxiety in my stomach. I was meeting David at the duplex at 9 a.m. Dr. Wilson at 9:30, Michael and Lisa at 11 o'clock. I dressed carefully, wanting to project competence. As I was about to leave my new apartment, my phone rang. It was Dad. "Jeannie," he said, without preamble, "your mother and I are heading to the duplex now. We thought we'd surprise you and bring breakfast. Kevin and Sarah are meeting us there with some boxes." My heart raced. They were going to arrive before me, before the tenants, before I had a chance to explain. The confrontation I had been dreading was about to happen in the worst possible way. "Actually, Dad," I managed to say, "I'm not at the duplex. I'm on my way there now to meet someone." "Perfect. We'll see you there," he replied cheerfully, hanging up before I could protest further. I immediately called David to warn him. He assured me he'd handle it professionally and wait for my arrival. The drive to the duplex was the longest 20 minutes of my life. With each mile, I rehearsed what I would say, how I would explain, how I would stand firm. As I turned onto the street, I saw my parents' car parked in front. Kevin's minivan pulled up behind it. And in my rearview mirror, a moving truck approaching from the opposite direction. Dr. Wilson was early. The moment of truth had arrived. There was no turning back. I parked behind Kevin's minivan and took a deep breath. Through the windshield, I could see my family standing on the sidewalk, looking confused. David, in his Cornerstone Property Management polo shirt, was speaking with them, gesturing toward the property. As I exited my car, I heard Dad saying, "There must be some mistake. This is my daughter's property. She bought it for our family. David noticed me approaching and gave me a subtle nod. Mrs. Harper, he said, using my last name formally. Your family was just explaining that they thought they would be moving in today. I stepped forward, my heart pounding. Mom, Dad, Kevin, Sarah, I began, my voice steadier than I expected. I need to explain something to you. My mother looked bewildered, clutching a bakery bag. Jeannie, what's going on? Who is this man? And why is there a moving truck coming? The truck had indeed arrived and was now parking across the street. Dr. Wilson, a dignified woman in her 60s, emerged from her car, parked further down, and approached our group with a curious expression. Kevin, always quick to anger, stepped toward me. What the hell, Jeannie? We were supposed to move in today. We gave notice at our apartment already. Before I could respond, David intervened smoothly. Perhaps we should all step aside to allow Dr. Wilson to access her new home. He gestured toward her. She has a scheduled move-in appointment, and her movers are waiting. Her new home? Sarah echoed, her voice rising. What is he talking about, Jeannie? All eyes turned to me. The moment I had been dreading and preparing for had arrived. I straightened my shoulders and spoke clearly. I rented both units of the duplex to tenants. Dr. Wilson is moving into Unit A today. And another couple is moving into Unit B later this morning. The silence that followed was deafening. My mother gasped. My father's face darkened with anger. Kevin stared at me in disbelief. David, sensing the tension, turned to Dr. Wilson. Doctor, if you'll allow me a few minutes to resolve this family matter, I'll be right with you. She nodded, understandingly, and returned to her car to wait. You did what? My father finally asked, his voice dangerously quiet. I rented both units, I repeated. I signed year-long leases with qualified tenants through Cornerstone Property Management. Kevin exploded. Are you kidding me? We have nowhere to live, Jeannie. We gave notice. Where are we supposed to go in 2 weeks? Sarah started to cry, turning away and pulling out her phone. My mother stepped forward and placed her hand on my arm. Sweetheart, there must be some misunderstanding. We discussed this. Kevin and his family need that second unit. You know their situation. I gently removed her hand. No, Mom. You discussed it. You all made plans for my property without asking me. You assumed I would just go along with it, like I always do. My father interjected. We thought you would want to help your brother. Family helps family, Jeannie. That's how we raised you. His words, meant to induce guilt, instead fueled my determination. Yes, family helps family, but it should go both ways. I shot back. When has Kevin ever made sacrifices for me? When have any of you considered what I might need or want before making decisions that affect my life? Kevin scoffed. Oh, here we go with the poor Jeannie routine. You have a good job, no kids, no real responsibilities. Some of us have actual problems. His dismissal of my life and choices was the final straw. 6 years of saving, of denying myself luxuries and vacations, of working overtime and weekends to reach my goal of property ownership, all reduced to having no real responsibilities. Real responsibilities? I countered, my voice rising despite my efforts to stay calm. Like financial responsibility? Because from where I'm standing, you've never shown any. You've borrowed money from me 3 times without repaying it. Mom and Dad have bailed you out countless times. And now you expected to live in my investment property rent-free, with no regard for how that would affect my mortgage payments or financial future. By now, Michael and Lisa had arrived for their move-in and were watching our family drama unfold from their car. David discreetly went to speak with them. My mother began to cry, and my father put his arm around her. I never thought you'd be so selfish, Jeannie, he said, disappointment evident in his tone. Your brother has children to think about. I am not being selfish. I replied, firmly. I'm being realistic. This duplex is an investment that I worked hard for. I have a mortgage to pay. If Kevin and his family lived there rent-free, I would be covering the entire cost. How is that fair? Sarah rejoined the conversation, her expression hard. We would have helped with utilities at least. And Kevin is looking for work. Once he finds something, we could have contributed. I shook my head. That's not enough. And based on past experience, I don't believe it would have happened anyway. How long before 1 month turned into 6, and 6 into a year? How long before my investment became a financial burden instead of an asset? Kevin turned to our parents. Can you believe this? After everything we've done for her. That statement stunned me into momentary silence. Everything they'd done for me? My mind raced through years of being expected to babysit at a moment's notice, to loan money I never got back, to rearrange my schedule to accommodate his needs. What exactly have you done for me, Kevin? I asked quietly. Name one time you've put my needs before your own. One time you've sacrificed anything for me. He faltered, unable to come up with an example. My father stepped in. That's enough, Jeannie. I don't know what's gotten into you, but this isn't how we raised you to behave. Family comes first. Yes, family comes first, I agreed. But I'm family too. And for years, I've been expected to put everyone else's needs ahead of my own. Not anymore. So, what are we supposed to do now? Kevin demanded. Where are we supposed to live? The same place you would live if I hadn't bought this duplex, I replied, exhaustion creeping into my voice. Find an apartment you can afford. Budget your money. Do what every other family has to do. Sarah scoffed. Easy for you to say from your position of privilege. Her comment ignited a fresh wave of anger. Privilege? I worked 60-hour weeks for years to save for this property. I packed lunches instead of eating out. I lived in a tiny apartment and drove an old car. I earned this through hard work and careful planning, not privilege. My mother, always the peacemaker, tried another approach. Jeannie, sweetheart, maybe we can compromise. Perhaps Kevin could pay some rent, even if it's below market rate. I shook my head. It's too late for that, Mom. I've signed binding leases with both tenants. They have legal rights to occupy those units for the next 12 months. You could break the leases, my father suggested. Pay whatever penalty there is. The fact that he would suggest I take a financial hit to fix Kevin's problem perfectly illustrated the dynamic I was fighting against. No, I said firmly. I will not break legal contracts and risk my professional reputation because Kevin failed to plan properly. These tenants have rights, and I intend to honor my agreements with them. Kevin threw up his hands in disgust. Unbelievable! So much for family loyalty. My mother was openly crying now. I don't understand why you didn't just tell us your plans, Jeannie. Why keep it a secret if you weren't doing anything wrong? Her question hit me hard. It was a fair point. Why hadn't I simply told them up front? Because you never would have listened. I replied honestly. You would have pressured me to change my mind, made me feel guilty, and probably would have worn me down eventually. You didn't even ask me before making plans for my property. You just assumed I would go along with what you wanted, like I always do. David approached cautiously. Mrs. Harper, Dr. Wilson is ready to begin her move-in process, and Michael and Lisa are waiting as well. I nodded to him, grateful for the interruption. I need to attend to my tenants now, I told my family. We can continue this discussion later if you want, but my decision is final. My father's face was a mask of disappointment as he took my mother's arm. Let's go, Martha. Clearly, Jeannie has made her choice. Kevin remained defiant. This isn't over, Jeannie. You can't just leave us homeless. You're not homeless, Kevin, I said, exhaustion creeping into my voice. You have 2 weeks to find a new place. Plenty of families manage it every day. Sarah grabbed his arm. Come on, Kevin. She obviously doesn't care about us or the children. Let's go. As they turned to leave, my mother looked back at me, tears in her eyes. I don't recognize you anymore, Jeannie. This isn't the daughter I raised. Her words stung, but I stood my ground as they all got into their vehicles and drove away. Only when they were out of sight did I allow my shoulders to slump and the tears to well in my eyes. David approached and handed me a tissue. That was tough, he said kindly. But for what it's worth, I think you did the right thing. I wiped my eyes and straightened my posture. Thank you. Now, let's get Dr. Wilson moved into her new home. As we walked toward the duplex where Dr. Wilson was waiting patiently, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. The confrontation had been every bit as painful as I'd anticipated, but it was necessary. For perhaps the first time in my adult life, I had put my own needs first. The fallout would be significant, but so would the growth that came from finally breaking unhealthy patterns. As I extended my hand to greet Dr. Wilson properly, I managed a genuine smile. This was the beginning of a new chapter, not just for my tenants, but for me as well. The silence from my family was deafening in the days following the confrontation. My mother's daily texts ceased. My father's weekend calls vanished. Even Kevin, who usually contacted me whenever he needed something, maintained radio silence. It was as if I'd been excommunicated for my act of self-preservation. The first week was the hardest. I'd pick up my phone to call Mom, then set it down again, reminding myself I'd done nothing wrong. I had simply protected my investment and set a long overdue boundary. Still, 32 years of conditioning was difficult to overcome. The guilt weighed heavily, especially at night when I lay awake in my new apartment, wondering if I'd been too harsh, too sudden. Taylor, my friend, was an invaluable support. She came over with takeout and wine, letting me vent my complicated emotions. I keep second-guessing myself, I admitted, curled on my new couch. Maybe I should have just let them have the duplex. Maybe I'm being selfish. Taylor looked at me incredulously. Jeannie, do you hear yourself? You worked for 6 years to save for that property. 6 years! And they expected to live there for free without even discussing it with you. How is protecting your investment selfish? But they are family, I said weakly, the argument sounding hollow even to my own ears. Yes, and family should support each other mutually, not just take and take and take, she replied firmly. When was the last time Kevin sacrificed anything for you? I couldn't think of a single example. Exactly, Taylor continued. This is a pattern that needed to be broken. And honestly, you did Kevin a favor in the long run. He needs to learn financial responsibility, not get another bailout. Deep down, I knew she was right. My brother had never faced the consequences of his financial decisions because someone had always been there to rescue him. By refusing to be his safety net this time, I was forcing him to find his own solutions. The second week brought practical concerns that distracted me from the family drama. Both sets of tenants had settled in, and David sent detailed reports. Minor maintenance issues, a leaky faucet, a sticky door. Dealing with these small problems gave me a sense of accomplishment. The first rental checks arrived in my account, tangible validation of my decision. Seeing those deposits, knowing they'd cover the majority of my mortgage, brought a profound sense of satisfaction. This was what I had worked toward. By the third week, the silence from my family became concerning rather than hurtful. I wondered how Kevin and Sarah were managing, whether they found a place. Despite our disagreement, I did care. I finally broke down and texted my mother, just checking in. Hope everyone is well. Her response came hours later, brief and formal, we found an apartment. The children are settled. We are fine. The terseness stung, but I was relieved they had housing. I responded, I'm glad to hear that. I miss you. She didn't reply. A month after the confrontation, a handwritten letter arrived from my mother. The sight of her familiar handwriting on the envelope brought tears to my eyes before I even opened it. Inside was a 4-page letter, the first real communication. My dearest Jeannie, she began, it has taken me some time to process what happened and to try to understand your perspective. I want you to know that while I was hurt and disappointed by your decision, I have been reflecting on our family dynamics and my role in creating the situation. She went on to acknowledge that the family had often taken my generosity for granted and had developed expectations that weren't fair to me. She admitted Kevin had been allowed to rely too heavily on family support. Your father and I had good intentions, she wrote. We wanted to help Kevin through a difficult time, but we should have asked you first, not assumed you would go along with our plan. That was wrong of us, and I'm sorry. Her apology brought fresh tears. It was more than I had expected, and exactly what I needed to hear. She continued, Kevin and Sarah have found a 2-bedroom apartment across town. It's not ideal, but it's within their budget. The children are sharing a room, which has been an adjustment, but they are resilient. Kevin has found part-time work at a warehouse while he continues to look for something in his field. Sarah has picked up more hours teaching. They are managing, which I suppose is the important thing. The letter ended with a cautious olive branch. We would love to see you at Sunday dinner this week if you're willing. I can't promise there won't be tension, but I can promise that your father and I will make an effort to respect your boundaries. Kevin may need more time. Love always, Mom. I held the letter to my chest, overwhelmed with relief and gratitude. It wasn't a complete resolution, but it was a start. The acknowledgement, the apology, it was profound. That Sunday, I drove to my parents' house with a mix of anxiety and hope. When my mother opened the door, there was an awkward hesitation before she pulled me into a tight hug. I've missed you, she whispered. I've missed you, too, Mom, I replied, fighting back tears. Dinner was subdued. Kevin, Sarah, and the children weren't there, which was probably for the best. My father was reserved at first, but as the meal progressed, he began to thaw. By dessert, we were having something resembling a normal conversation. Before I left, my father took me aside. It was wrong of us to make plans for your property without consulting you, he admitted gruffly. You worked hard for that duplex. It's yours to do with as you choose. Coming from my father, this acknowledgement was huge. He had never been one to admit mistakes easily. Thank you, Dad, I said, hugging him. That means a lot to me. The road to complete reconciliation was longer with Kevin and Sarah. They declined the next several family dinners when they knew I'd be present. When we finally did see each other at my nephew's birthday party 2 months later, the tension was palpable. Kevin was coolly polite. Sarah barely acknowledged me. But at least they were civil. The children, thankfully, were unchanged in their affection for their aunt. Sophie threw her arms around me. Liam eagerly showed me his science project. Even little Ethan wanted to sit on my lap during cake, a normalcy that helped ease the strained atmosphere. As months passed, family dynamics subtly shifted. My parents began to treat me with new respect, consulting me about decisions rather than informing me after the fact. They stopped automatically volunteering my time and resources for family needs. It was a profound change that validated my decision to stand up for myself. Kevin and Sarah remained distant, but there were small signs of progress. Kevin sent me a text when he secured a full-time position. A small olive branch, which I gratefully acknowledged. Sarah included me in a group text about school fundraisers, a minor inclusion that nonetheless indicated a thawing of relations. Most surprisingly, my brother seemed to be developing a sense of financial responsibility. According to my mother, he and Sarah had created a budget and were sticking to it. They had even started a small savings account, a first in their married life. As Thanksgiving approached, I found myself both anticipating and dreading the holiday. It would be the first major family gathering since the duplex incident, as I'd come to think of it. When Mom called to confirm I'd be attending, she mentioned casually that Kevin and Sarah would be there. They're doing better now, she added. Kevin especially. I think this whole experience has been a wake-up call for him. When the day arrived, I brought a bottle of wine and my signature pumpkin pie, a sort of armor for the potentially uncomfortable reunion. To my surprise, Kevin greeted me at the door, offering a tentative smile. Hey, Jeannie, he said. Good to see you. Good to see you, too, I replied, meaning it despite my nervousness. The day was not without its awkward moments, but overall it was more pleasant than I had dared hope. During a quiet moment in the kitchen, Kevin approached me. I want to apologize, he said, clearly uncomfortable, but determined. What we tried to do with your duplex wasn't right. We shouldn't have expected you to house us for free. His apology, though belated, was sincere. I could see it cost him something to admit he was wrong. Thank you, Kevin, I said. That means a lot to me. He nodded, then added, the apartment we found turned out to be okay. It's teaching us to live within our means, which I guess was overdue. It was perhaps the most self-aware statement I had ever heard from my brother. I smiled. I'm glad things are working out. And I started a savings account, he continued, a hint of pride in his voice. Not much in it yet, but it's a start. That's great, Kevin, I said warmly. Really great. As I drove home that evening, I reflected on the journey of the past 6 months. The confrontation at the duplex had been painful and disruptive, but it had also been necessary. By standing up for myself, I had not only protected my financial investment but had also catalyzed important changes in my family dynamics. My relationship with my parents was stronger and more balanced. Kevin was finally taking steps toward financial responsibility, and I had grown in confidence and self-respect, learning that setting boundaries, while difficult, was essential for healthy relationships. The duplex itself was proving to be an excellent investment. Both tenants were reliable and respectful. The rental income covered most of my mortgage, allowing me to build equity while also saving for future investments. Dr. Wilson had even sent me a holiday card, thanking me for providing such a lovely home for her new chapter in life. As I unlocked the door to my apartment, I felt a profound sense of peace. The path had not been easy, but it had led to growth for all of us. And perhaps most importantly, I had learned to value my own needs and goals as much as I valued those of my family. 6 months after the confrontation, my life had settled into a new normal that would have been unimaginable a year earlier. My one-bedroom apartment near my office had become a true home, decorated with intention. The shorter commute gave me an extra hour each day, which I used for morning yoga and reading, small luxuries I had denied myself during years of aggressive saving. The property management company sent monthly reports, the rental deposits reliably appeared in my account. Both tenants had renewed their leases for a second year. Dr. Wilson had planted flowers in the small garden, while Michael and Lisa had repainted their living room with my permission, improvements that only enhanced the property value. My relationship with my parents had evolved into something more balanced and mature. The weekly Sunday dinners resumed, but with a difference. I was now treated as an equal adult, with valid perspectives and boundaries, not just as the reliable daughter who would always accommodate others. My father had even asked my advice about his retirement investments, a significant shift in how he viewed my financial acumen. The most surprising change, however, was in my relationship with Kevin. Our childhood roles had been so firmly established. He was the charming, needy one, I was the responsible, capable one. The duplex incident had shattered that dynamic, forcing us to establish a new way of relating. Kevin had maintained the full-time job he found, showing a commitment to stability. He and Sarah had downsized their lifestyle, a concept that seemed to be finally taking root. Most significantly, Kevin had started repaying the money he had borrowed from me over the years, sending small but regular payments each month without prompting. On a warm Saturday in June, exactly 1 year after the confrontation, Kevin invited me to meet him for coffee. It was an unusual request. Curious and slightly apprehensive, I agreed. The coffee shop was busy, but Kevin had secured a quiet table. He looked different somehow, more settled. He traded his usual graphic t-shirts for a simple button-down, his perpetually disheveled hair neatly trimmed. "Thanks for meeting me," he said as I sat down with my latte. "I wanted to talk to you without the whole family around." I nodded, waiting. He took a deep breath. "This past year has been enlightening. When you refused to let us move into your duplex, I was furious. I thought you were being selfish and cruel, especially knowing our situation with the kids." He paused, collecting his thoughts. But looking back, it was the wake-up call I needed. Sarah and I had been living beyond our means for years, always expecting someone, usually you, or mom and dad, to bail us out when things got tough. His self-awareness caught me by surprise. It must have shown on my face because he smiled ruefully. "I know, shocking that I can admit it, right?" he said. "But it's true. We never had to face the consequences of our choices because there was always a safety net. When you removed that net, we had to figure things out on our own for once." "I appreciate you saying that, Kevin," I replied carefully. "It wasn't an easy decision for me." He nodded. "I get that now. And I want you to know that things are actually better for us. The apartment isn't as nice as your duplex would have been, but it's ours, and we pay for it ourselves. The kids are doing fine with sharing rooms, and Sarah and I finally had to sit down and make a real budget, something we should have done years ago." He reached into his pocket and pulled out an envelope, sliding it across the table. I opened it to find a check for $1,000, a substantial portion of what he still owed me. "It's not everything," he acknowledged, "but it's a start. I plan to pay back every cent." The check represented more than money. It was tangible evidence of his growth and our changing relationship. I felt a lump form in my throat. "Thank you," I said simply. "No, thank you," he replied, surprising me again, for not enabling me anymore. For forcing me to grow up, even though I fought it every step of the way. We talked for nearly 2 hours that afternoon, having perhaps the most honest conversation of our adult lives. Kevin shared his struggles with financial responsibility, admitting he had always envied my discipline while simultaneously resenting it. I confessed my frustration at being taken for granted and my guilt at finally standing up for myself. By the time we parted, something fundamental had shifted between us. We were no longer locked in the roles of responsible sister and irresponsible brother. We were simply two adults with different strengths and weaknesses, finding a new way to be family without the unhealthy patterns of the past. The lessons I learned through the duplex experience extended beyond family dynamics. I had discovered a confidence in my financial decisions that translated to other areas of my life. At work, I began speaking up more, taking on leadership roles. I negotiated a promotion and salary increase, advocating for myself with an assurance I had previously reserved for others. I also began exploring additional investment opportunities. The success of the duplex had given me both the financial means and the confidence to expand my portfolio. My personal relationships benefited from my newfound boundary setting as well. I became more selective about how I spent my time and energy, prioritizing connections that were reciprocal and supportive. I learned to say no without elaborate explanations or apologies, a simple skill that nevertheless transformed how I moved through the world. The holiday season brought another milestone. For the first time, I hosted Thanksgiving dinner at my apartment. It was a tight fit, but everyone made it work, including Kevin, Sarah, and the children. My mother brought her traditional stuffing, and my father carved the turkey I had nervously prepared. As we gathered around my table, I looked at the faces of my family and felt a profound sense of gratitude. The journey had been difficult, but we had emerged stronger, with healthier relationships based on mutual respect rather than obligation and expectation. Kevin raised his glass. "To Jeannie," he said, "for teaching us all that true family support means helping each other grow, not enabling bad habits. And for making one hell of a turkey for her first Thanksgiving." Everyone laughed and clinked glasses. My mother reached over to squeeze my hand, her eyes communicating what words could not: pride, love, and a deep appreciation for the woman I had become. The duplex that had caused so much conflict had ultimately been the catalyst for positive change in all our lives. By standing firm in my decision, I had not only secured my financial future but also helped my family evolve into healthier versions of themselves. The short-term pain had led to long-term growth that none of us could have anticipated. As I reflect on this journey, the lesson that resonates most deeply is this: setting boundaries is not selfish. It's necessary for healthy relationships. By finally valuing my own needs and goals as much as those of my family, I created space for all of us to grow. The old saying that you can't pour from an empty cup proved profoundly true. By taking care of my own financial and emotional well-being, I became more, not less, able to support my family in meaningful ways. The duplex stands as a physical reminder of this transformation. What began as a simple investment property became the turning point in our family's story. The moment when old patterns were broken and new, healthier ones began to form. And for that unexpected gift, I am eternally grateful.